There are so many people that believe in horoscopes. Many have invested their lives and time in the horoscope. Countless individuals read their daily horoscopes for guidance, for comfort, and for fortune. Ever thought about where such practices come from? What is the true explanation and motive behind this mystic custom? Next time you decide to check the newspaper or magazine for predictions or love advice through the daily horoscope, know this: you are involving yourself in divination, which is forbidden of God. I hope you brought your shovel because we are about to do some digging right here on Open Well. Where did horoscopes come from? We have to get into the truth of the matter. When we talk about horoscopes, we are talking about astrology. I have a couple definitions for astrology. The first one is according to Oxford, which is the study of movements and relative positions of celestial bodies, interpreted as having an influence on human affairs and the natural world. Celestial bodies are considered to be the stars and the lights in the sky. According to modern astrologers, the planets control or regulate the flow of energy in an individual's experience, as well as the basic drive or urge in the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is the part of the mind that is inaccessible to the conscious mind but affects behavior and emotions. According to this belief system, the planets express themselves with distinct qualities in the 12 signs of the zodiac, or the area of the sky that covers 8 degrees north or south of the ecliptic. The ecliptic is a great circular path the sun takes during the course of the year. The planets are also expressed in the so called houses of the horoscope. The horoscope is divided into a number of houses, and the positions of these houses depends on the time and location rather than a date. There is a logical reason why God instructed his people not to follow this practice. Some believe it's okay to get into horoscopes and follow after the knowledge it offers. Many have said they believe in horoscopes because to them it's accurate. Or is it really? When it comes to these things, there is a lot of manipulation occurring that goes unnoticed. One of the reasons why God does not want us to get ourselves involved in horoscopes is because it plays with the mind. Jeremiah 14:14 reads, "Then the Lord said unto me, the prophets prophesy lies in my name. I sent them not, neither have I commanded them, neither spake unto them. They prophesy unto a false vision and divination, and a thing of naught, and the deceit of their heart." Let's dig a little bit into the scripture for a moment. It reveals the rise of false prophets, which many times false prophets, especially in our day, are not all located behind a pulpit or among the congregation. In 1 John 1:4, the saints of God were instructed not to believe every spirit that comes their way, but to try or test them to see they were sent from God. Why is this? Because many false prophets are going out into the world. If the false prophets are going out into the world, then who are they? They are those who practice divination and work to deceive others to believe in the practice they preach or teach. They are astrologers and also many scientists within the scientific community, which further details I'll say for another podcast. They speak lies. They make predictions by examining the position of the planets on certain dates. And the Lord told Jeremiah that he did not send them, neither have he commanded them. Yet these prophets have gone out into the world as if they had been sent from God. They speak of false visions and divinations, a thing of naught, which means good for nothing. Their hearts were deceitful. Now, for the second definition for astrology, which is coming from the Webster Dictionary, it's the divination of the supposed influence of the stars and planets on human affairs and terrestrial events by their position and aspects. So we see here the Webster plainly defines what divination is. It's very important to realize the woes and the dangers of this practice. In ancient astrology, the planets represented the will of the false gods and their direct influence on human affairs. Now, this is very important to take note of. This sounds so familiar, back when the fallen angels or the sons of God fell down from heaven and intermingled with the daughters of men. As a matter of fact, all the planets were named after Greek and Roman gods and goddesses except Earth. Ancient Greeks, 1,000 years earlier, named the first five planets simply because they were only visible to the naked eye before the invention of the telescope. Astrology began back in ancient Babylon. The Babylonians created their own form of horoscopes. As it spread to the eastern Mediterranean, its popularity rose up in Egypt, and the Greeks later came into it, but was modified into their culture. The word astrology comes from the early Latin word astolia, which derives from Greek meaning astron, meaning stars, and logia, meaning study of or account of the stars. Astrologia, later on, after a while, came into meaning star divination. It also has been assigned to the scientific term astronomia. The reading of the horoscopes is practicing divination and witchcraft. Divination is the practice of seeking knowledge of the future or of the unknown by supernatural means. Divination is the foretelling of future events, the discovery of things secret, or things of the unknown by seeking divine knowledge by divine beings, which in all cases are demons. Let's explore some of the scripture for more clarity. In Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 9 through 14, it reads, When thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. The children of Israel were delivered out of the land of Egypt and traveled through the land, the wilderness, for 40 years to get to the promised land God has given them. As they journey across the desert, God instructed them not to serve any other gods before him. God used the wilderness to condition the children of Israel to serve and to trust him. So the Lord in this verse was preparing and instructing them as they go into the land not to involve themselves with practices of these nations that were in the promised land. God says, Thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. The word learn is lamad, Lamad, in Hebrew, which means to learn, teach, exercise in, to be taught, or be trained. As the children of Israel was getting ready to go into this land, they were forbidden to be taught and to teach others to learn and exercise these abominations. Abominations are those that are morally disgusting and that which God hates. So in verse 10, God said, There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire, or to use it, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch. Verse 11, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. A necromancer is a person that communicates with the dead, especially in order to predict the future. Some people see this practice as completely harmless because they are not aware of the deception and the threat behind this scene. A person that claims to speak to the dead is not speaking to the dead, but are speaking to demons that disguise themselves as one from the dead. Those that have been laid to rest in their graves are gone and no longer have a presence or influence on earth. There is no such thing as speaking to our dead ancestors. This can be confirmed if you go over to Ecclesiastes, the ninth chapter, verses 5 through 6. For the living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything, neither have they any more a reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. Verse 6. Also their love and their hatred and their envy is now perished, neither have they any more a portion or possession forever in anything that is done under the sun. This clearly says the dead has no reward or no memory. The love, the hatred, and the envy they once had is gone because it's perished or passed away. The dead no longer have a portion in anything that is done under the sun, or they no longer have an influence on affairs on the earth. So if a necromancer or diviner is not speaking to the dead, then who are they really speaking to? they are more than likely speaking to demonic spirits. Continuing in Deuteronomy 18, chapter 18 and verse 12, for all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord thy God, doeth drive them out from before thee. Divination of any kind is an abomination to God, which he has driven them out from among his people. Horoscopes is not excluded from being an abomination. Let's look into why it is forbidden of God. A horoscope is an astrological chart or a sky map used to represent the position of the planets, sun, and moon and their physical aspects in relationship to each other. The word horoscope is derived from the Greek word or and scopus, meaning time and observer. The horoscope is a tool used for divination. It's a method or a system used to perform divination and observer of times. To follow the horoscope is to be an observer of times. Deuteronomy 18, verses 13 through 14. Thou shalt be perfect with the Lord thy God. Verse 14. For these nations which thou shalt possess, hearken unto observer of times, and unto diviners. But as for thee, the Lord thy God hath not suffered thee to do so. These nations, or the people of this world, hearkens or listens to observer of times. An observer of times is a soothsayer or an enchanter. They declare the outcome of a given day to be lucky or unlucky. They observe the clouds and the heavens to make predictions. These heathen nations put their trust and hope in diviners and soothsayers and not in God. Many have yielded into this deception by believing in it to govern and to give purpose to their lives. The purpose of the stars is not to predict your future or to declare your personality or behavior traits. God created the sun, the moon, and the stars to give light upon the earth and to divide the day from the night. They were made for signs, for marking the seasons, days, and years. The horoscope is used as a heavenly map that represents the alignment of the planets, the stars, and the constellations at the time of a person's birth or at a significant time in a person's life. When we discuss the horoscope, we also have to talk about the zodiac. The zodiac is an area of the sky that extends approximately 8 degrees north or south of the ecliptic. The ecliptic is a path the sun travels, the path the sun takes to revolve around an imaginary sphere around Earth in the course of a year, known as the celestial sphere. Now let's go a little deeper. This path the sun takes begins its 360-degree trip beginning at 0 degrees, known as the vernal equinox. The vernal equinox marks the beginning of the first sign, Aries, which is Latin for ram. The circular path the sun takes is divided into 12 elements of 30 degrees each. Each segment holds a zodiac sign. As the sun moves along the ecliptic, it passes from one zodiac sign to another. So from Aries, the sun travels another 30 degrees and enters into Taurus, and so on. The sun occupies at a given segment for a season and passes on. So when a person is born under a specific zodiac, the sun occupies determines that person's traits, habits, behavior, and so forth. According to this pagan belief, the movement of the sun holds the determining factor in a person's life. A person that is knowledgeable in the zodiac and horoscope would tend to judge a perfect stranger or anyone by asking them, "What's your sign?" They would size you up and tell you what type of person you are and who you are compatible with, etc. Married couples have chosen their mates based on this system. This is where the abomination falls into place because a believer of the horoscope has given credit and hope in the motion of the heavens and not of God. There is a long history of people from the past to the present day that observe the stars to plan their lives. Humans have turned to the stars to seek for answers and meaning in their lives. It gets deeper. The zodiac is also called the circuit of life. Each zodiac sign has a god or goddess that matches its traits. So when you claim a zodiac sign, you are placing yourself under the rule and attributes of that pagan god and patterned your lifestyle accordingly. When a diviner or astrologer casts your horoscope, they interpret your life and define your worth. They assign to you traits and characteristics based on a false and pagan god. For example, when we look at Aries, which is the first sign of the zodiac, it's ruled by the planet Mars. The ancient Greeks accredited Mars to Aries because they were so amazed by the red color of this planet. So the Greeks picked Mars for Aries, which goes back to Jeremiah 14:14, because they followed after the deceit of their own heart. So Aries, who is the child of Zeus and Hera, is the god of war. Aries represents masculinity, fire, energy, and competition because it is said he was also fiery and very competitive, according to the myth. The way the story goes in Greek mythology, Ares was the son of two of the most powerful gods, and he did not get along with either parent. He was known for being chaotic, impulsive, and aggressive. Those that are born under the sign of Aries gets these characteristics assigned to them. It was God that created us and gave us purpose. The alignment of the stars does not determine our purpose in life. In Jeremiah 29:11, the Lord said, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." Psalms 139:2, the Lord know my downsetting and my uprising. Thou understandest my thought afar off. Psalms 137, the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. The zodiac, or the reading of the horoscope, ought not to order our steps or direct our path in life. We must realize and understand. Divination is a demonic practice that is governed by demonic entities. Individuals that give into horoscopes are falling into a trap and is taken by the influence of demons. Divination comes from the Latin word divinare, which means to foresee, to foretell, to predict, to prophesy, or to be inspired by a god. An astrologer prints the horoscope in the newspapers that are personalized by date. These horoscopes make predictions in people's lives, describe their personalities, and give them advice, all according to the position of astronomical bodies. An astrologer is a diviner and a false prophet. Jeremiah 14:14. Then the Lord said unto me, the prophets prophesy lies in my name. I sent them not, neither have I commanded them, neither spake unto them. They prophesy unto you a false vision and divination, and a thing of naught, and the deceit of their heart. God thinks ill will against the casting and the reading into the horoscopes. Some of the American presidents and government officials have consulted astrologers and psychics before making important decisions. Ronald Reagan famously used astrology in the White House before making decisions. His wife, Nancy Reagan, was heavily obsessed with astrology, which was probably the reason behind his involvement with astrology. Virtually, and I quote, virtually every major move and decision the Reagans made was cleared in advance with a woman in San Francisco who drew up horoscopes to make certain that the planets were in a favorable alignment for the enterprise, according to Donald Reagan, who was the Reagan's chief of staff. Listen to this clip.
NBC's Andrea Mitchell tells us tonight, new reports of Mrs. Reagan's reliance on an astrologer raise new questions about national security.
In her book, My Turn, Nancy Reagan says she relied on astrology as a crutch because of fears about her husband's safety after the assassination attempt. Astrologer Joan Quigley told NBC News she and Mrs. Reagan talked constantly, sometimes several times a day, and not only about the president's safety.
She was not only interested in the president's safety and having me do for him the things that I'd done during the 80 campaign, but she was also interested in improving her own image. And I was very occupied with that at first.
Quigley had veto power over the scheduling of all presidential press conferences. She advised when it was safe to travel, when he should hold a summit.
I picked a time on the day they left that was an excellent time for what we wanted to accomplish. And I also changed their evil empire attitude by briefing them on Gorbachev's horoscope. By the time we were working on the Washington summit, she was calling me 2 and 3 times a day.
Intelligence officials say the CIA went nuts when it learned the First Lady was discussing U.S.-Soviet relations with an outsider on non-secure lines. Some White House officials were also horrified that presidential security was being breached. And according to former White House officials and Quigley, the astrologer was involved in everything. She picked the departure time for the Reykjavik summit, the optimum time for signing an arms control treaty, the best time for the trip to Moscow. And when Mrs. Reagan was upset about a controversial trip to Germany in 1985, Quigley plotted every takeoff and landing. Her scheduling for that visit to the Bitburg Cemetery was so complicated that former White House aide Michael Deaver sought permission from Mrs. Reagan to talk to the astrologer directly. The president knew what was going on. Deaver told NBC News that if Mrs. Reagan wanted the schedule changed, she would say, "I've told Ronnie, and that's what Joan recommends." Described by friends as superstitious, almost mystical, Reagan was inclined to defer to his wife's wishes.
No, that's bad luck.
I have learned not to argue with her superstition.
Former aides say Ronald Reagan was a man who read his horoscope and the funnies before the rest of the paper. They say he wasn't only indulging his wife, that the former president also believed in astrology. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Washington.
The woman who advised President Reagan on his presidential decisions was Joan Quigley. Ronald Reagan led the country with the assistance from a diviner, a person of divination. The 29th President of the United States of America, President Warren G. Harding, also used astrology during his presidency early in the 1920s. Let's bear this in mind concerning the truth about horoscopes. Horoscopes is a product of divination. The zodiac signs gradually change in meaning and purpose over time from 1300 BCE to 500 BCE. The Babylonians used the sign mainly for marking the seasons. They later used a zodiac system to locate the position of the planets in the sky. The Greeks borrowed from the Babylonians and used animals in the zodiac, which were said are animals honored by Zeus. In Leviticus 19 and 26, God commanded his people that they shall not use enchantments nor observe times. Verse 31 says, "Regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards to be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God." So if you think horoscopes are harmless and helpful to you, I challenge you to think again. It plays with the mind and defiles your spirit. It's defiling because it causes you to commune or open yourself up to demonic spirits and take on the characteristics of a familiar spirit, which are also demons. Well, that concludes this episode, The Truth About Horoscopes. When you begin to dig into the historic past, the truth begins to come out. The truth is the truth and does not change. Hopefully, we now see the dangers behind the practice of astrology and the reading of the horoscopes. Our lives have meaning through God and not through the alignment of the stars. God commanded the stars and the lights in the sky to take their course, so it is He that rules everything. Continue to dig for the truth and remember there is springing water at the bottom of the well. God bless.